Death Claims, a Dave Brandstetter mystery. Book 2. Author, Joseph Hansen. Publisher, University of Wisconsin Press, Terrace Books. Narrator, Eric Aust. Chapter 12. Mesquite Trail climbed narrow and crooked between steep slopes overgrown with orange, pink lantana, blue plumbago, stands of lavender joe pie, old oaks cast speckled shadow on the worn black top, warmed by noon winter sun. Tall, rough-barked Japanese pines dropped pungency. Back from the road, up scaffolded flights of paintless wooden steps or down steps cut into the earth. Old redwood houses, deep-eaved, dark-windowed, low-porched, half hid themselves in green winter brush. Magenta bougainvillea glowed on a shake roof. Scarlet geraniums blazed in a clump of sun beside a shed. Here, a pair of goats was tethered. There, a burrow. Rabbits. A hand-lettered sign said, "Fresh eggs." Inside a paddock knock together out of second-hand lumber, a pair of dun horses turned their heads and pricked up their ears as he passed. With a scissoring of blue wings, a jay cut past the windshield. A ground squirrel hopped and halted across the road. Dave tapped the horn, frowned, looking for a name on a mailbox. And there it was, outside a gate in a redwood grape stake fence where a bright red pickup truck waited with its tailgate down. He swung his car around and parked behind the truck on the dusty road shoulder. He got out, shut the door, read the lettering on the truck. Sick room supplies. A stripped mattress lay trussed in straps on the truck bed. The gate hung partway open. Nailed to it was an enameled tin sign, "For Sale." A realtor's name, phone numbers, "Do Not Disturb Occupant." He pushed the gate. Two men in white coveralls carried up toward him. Sections of a brown metal bed below, on a square porch, were ferns dyed in hanging baskets. The chrome tubing of a wheelchair glinted next to it. A pair of chipped green oxygen tanks stood strapped to a red dolly. Dave stepped off the cracked cement steps onto a thick mat of dark ground ivy so that the men could pass. Then he went on down the drooping branches of old pepper trees, brushing his shoulders, dried berries crunching under his shoes. Twilight Ingalls blinked at him. Through a dusty, bulging screen door, he was a bald, spare man in an old turtleneck pullover, old corduroy pants, linty corduroy slippers. In one of his hands was a sheaf of typed papers, in the other a half-empty glass of milk. A smear of peanut butter was at a corner of his mouth. He chewed, swallowed, and then frowned. "Mr. Brandstetter? It's not 1 o'clock. "I'm sorry," Dave said. "Getting here didn't take as long as I thought it would." It was a lie. Los Calados, tucked in folds of the Sierra Madre foothills east of Pasadena, was 20 minutes from the freeway. He'd known that, starting out, but to reach a place early meant you learned things you weren't supposed to learn. Mostly, they were useless things. Now and then they helped. He made the offer he always made, but barely got taken up on it. "I'll go away and come back later if you like." "No need. Come in. I'm just finishing my lunch." He knocked back the rest of the milk and with the hand that held the empty glass, pushed open the screen. "Can I offer you anything?" "Anything simple? That is, I'm down to basics. Crackers, sardines." "Alone you tend to let the larder go to hell." "I know," Dave said. "Thanks. I've eaten." The screen door lapsed shut behind him. There was no hall. They were in a broad, low-ceilinged living room, redwood paneled, chest high, white plastered above, built-in bookcases, window seats, arched brick fireplace chairs, couch, coffee table were mission-style, flat-armed golden oak, 50, 60 years old. Comfortable. The cushions. Covered in good-looking plain fabrics. Vast would have had to be the word for the carpet. Oriental, rich plumes and russets. Scuffed in places, but still darkly splendid. The colors repeated themselves in stained glass panels above the wide windows. Art Nouveau flowers and leaves. "Sit down. I'll be with you in a minute." Ingalls went away into the rear of the house. Old plumbing shuddered. Tap water splashed. Dave put on his glasses and crouched to look at the books on the shelves. Right. Morris, Nathaniel West, H.L. Davis, and Thomas Wolfe. First editions again. As at April Stannard's, there was a hefty volume of Wolfe's letters, too, the wide back strip in soft black cloth, and next to it in hard-finished beige. Buckram? Thomas Wolfe's Western Journal, The Lost Pages. A slim book. He took it down, opened it, edited with an introduction by Dwight Ingalls, Los Calados College Press, 1958. There was no noise from the soft-soled slippers on the thick rug, but a creaking board made Dave aware of Ingalls passing through the room. He set the book back. The screen door made a wooden sound. Dave stood with a snap of knee joints. Outside, Ingalls said something. One of the truckers answered him. Dave pushed the glasses back into his pocket. There was the hollow bump of the wheelchair down the porch steps. Dave dropped onto the couch. The screen door closed. Ingalls came back. "And that's that," he said bleakly. "That's that." He'd left the milk glass, the peanut butter and smear, and the handful of paper somewhere. He sat in a chair by a lamp. There was a pear-shaped Arab water jar of hammered copper, shaded by a drum of rough brown burlap. The table the lamp stood on was crowded with paperback books, pamphlets, literary quarterlies. Among them, Ingalls found a crumpled tarlatan pack. He dug into it with a thin finger. Empty, he twisted it, dropped it into a hammered copper ashtray already glutted with butts. Dave held out his own pack. "Thank you. What's this about John Oates?" "He's dead." Dave scratched a match. Ingalls set forward to get the light. He nodded. "They told me at the bookstore. Drowned. A shame. He was a strong swimmer. My company isn't satisfied. It was an accident. Oates and Norwood is 100 miles from here. You still go there?" Ingalls turned down the corners of his mouth. "I telephone occasionally. There's not much point in going anymore. The shop slipped badly after John left." "It didn't look prosperous to me," Dave said. "Dusty gaps in the shelves. Why?" "John was the bookman," Ingalls said. "Norwood really only went into the business out of friendship." Faint smile. "He was selling insurance before." Thoughtful frown. "Oh, he might have managed I suppose, but buying John out hurt his cash reserves." "Do you know the figure?" Footsteps thudded on the porch. There was a shrill squeak of little wheels, a jarring of the hollow steps again. Ingalls turned his head toward the sound. Squeak and jolt. Squeak and jolt. The dolly with the oxygen tanks went up toward the street. It took a full minute, a long time. Then there was a clatter and bang of metal, the tiny slam of the tailgate on the red truck, its cab doors closing, the splutter and roar of its engine. Ingalls kept listening till there was nothing more to hear. Then he remembered. "Dave, I'm sorry. What did you say? Do you know how much Norwood paid Oates?" "I only know that the last time I was in the shop," he squinted at the ceiling, "a month, 6 weeks ago. Eve Oates was, as my students would put it, chewing Norwood out about it. They were in the back room, hadn't heard me open the front door. She called Norwood a sentimental fool for giving her ex-husband, too much. It went for medical bills," Dave said. "That and a lot more." Norwood told her that she said the country hospital was where he belonged, a charity case. Since he owned no part of the business, had no income, he qualified. Money was being wasted, thrown away. "Delightful woman," Dave said. "She's always been the hard-headed member of the firm. Money is what she understands. A shop like that has to be able to buy when the opportunity arises, which can happen at any time. Oates and Norwood had a reputation. Fine books, scarce books. I don't know." Ingalls sighed. mouth a twist of regret. Probably, even with capital, Norwood couldn't have kept things up. John did all the buying. What about Eve? Ingalls shook his head. She'd know the price to pay, but not what to buy. When, where. You see, it's a talent, an instinct. Either you have it or you don't. John had it. And because neither Eve nor Norwood has, I don't think the shop can last. They used to put out exciting catalogs, squinting in the smoke from the cigarettes fastened in a corner of his mouth. He shuffled printed matter, pulled out a saddle-stitched white booklet, and passed it to Dave. Oates and Norwood, Ernst Haycock, West Northwest. Original serial publications, first editions, autograph letters, holograph manuscripts, typescripts, and galleys, with authors' changes. That's the kind of coup John was famous for, Ingalls said. He did it repeatedly. Not every catalog had a collection like that, but the individual items were always first-rate. There were catalogs 4 times a year, since he left. Ingalls took the booklet Dave handed back to him and laid it down. There hasn't been one. They're trying to get something together, Dave said. I saw a box of file cards by the typewriter in the back room, books stacked up with slips of paper in them on the desk along with bottles. It will have to be a strong list. Ingalls rubbed out his cigarette in the copper bowl. They've lost ground. People are forgetting. Not you, Dave said. You went there at least once since Oates left. It was January 3rd, wasn't it? The day he telephoned you? Ingalls' bald head gave a slight turn to the side. He watched Dave narrowly. A minute. From the corner of his eyes, he moistened his lips. Why, He worked at a little uneasy smile. Yes, I suppose it was. Yes, it was. He nodded a quarter inch. And before you went to the shop, you saw him at April Stenard's place in Arena Blanca, right? I didn't know whose house it was. He was alone there, yes, at Arena Blanca. April Stenard, you say? She worked at the shop for a while. Pretty girl. She says you never came to see him, and it hurt his feelings. He thought of you as his friend. I thought of him the same way, Ingalls said. But my wife was ill, had been ill for years. Until last spring, my daughter lived here and helped me look after her. But when she married, I had most of it to do alone. It was a progressive circulatory ailment. Before it ended, it involved several amputations. Julia grew more and more dependent. I was less and less able to get away. I could hire a woman to help out, but not full-time. Professors aren't paid fortunes, you know, Mr. Brandstetter, and the operations, the hospitalizations, were expensive. Oh, well, he moved a hand impatiently. You're not concerned with my personal woes. His eyes shifted for a gray second toward the front door, the porch. And as you no doubt have guessed, they're ended now. I didn't call the rental people right away. Julia died 10 days ago. He held up a quick hand, shut his eyes, shook his head. No, don't condole. It was inevitable. I was prepared as one ever can be. In any case, he drew a breath and let it out. I simply wasn't able to get away to visit John Oates in the hospital. But you managed it when he'd phoned. Why? Ingalls frowned, smoothed a brushy gray eyebrow with a finger eyeing Dave. I don't quite understand this interview, your position or mine. Am I being accused of something? Ought I to call an attorney? I don't know why you'd think that, Dave said. John Oates became addicted to morphine in the hospital and failed to break the habit. He had no money, but he was buying the drug illegally, expensively. I wondered if he tried to borrow money from you. Ingalls didn't answer right away, but the weariness went out of him. He relaxed. Yes, his smile was sorrowful, but not a failed attempt this time. That was what he wanted. Did he get it? He said he needed $500. I couldn't manage that. I went to the college bazaar and drew $100 in advance salary. I gave him that. Did he tell you what it was for? I didn't ask, Ingalls said. Dave got to his feet, smiled. So, April was wrong. He had a friend after all. He turned away. There was a muffled twang from a spring in Ingalls' chair. He went with Dave to the door, swung it open for him. On the porch, Dave asked, "How long had you known him?" The light from the yard glanced green off Engel's naked scalp. He wrinkled his forehead. "Years. 1957? Yes, that's right. I'd published some papers on Thomas Wolfe in scholarly journals. I got a letter from Oates and Norwood from John. He had a manuscript in Wolfe's handwriting. Was I interested?" His smile at Dave was admonitory. "That, you see, explains why a reader in Los Calados began patronizing a bookstore 100 miles up the coast in El Molino. Of course, I went at once, very excited when I saw the manuscript. Notebooks, actually. I was even more excited. They were the missing 18,000 words of the journal Wolfe kept of his trip through the national parks in the West, just before his death. Only about 12,000 words had ever been found, but he told several people in letters that he had 30 to 50,000 words written. "You don't have to tell me the rest," Dave said. "I saw your book." He jerked his head. "On the shelf. In there. Handsome book. Must have earned you quite a reputation." "It's the kind of thing a scholar prays will happen to him, but never believes can. You understand now that if I'd had $500, I'd have given it to John gladly." "I understand that," Dave said, as he climbed the steep stairs to the street. A mockingbird in one of the shaggy pepper trees spilled song, spilled joy. His hand on the gate at the top, Dave glanced back down. Engel stood on the porch edge, peering up, but not at him. He was trying to locate the bird. He looked as if the sound gave him pain. Gay Mysteries Audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.